Blog Talk Radio.
Michiamo apura kanu apurai kaitnut neye AKANFO NANASOM da medinde Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan Apomumayna Maruka Etipi Mu Odwirafo Odwoodo MAYN. That means greetings to all Apuraikani people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is AKANFO NANASOM Day, ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion day. My name is Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan. Odwirafo of the Hoodoo Nation in North America, within Odwoodo MAYN, the purified nation of Apuraikani people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you for tuning into the show once again. We're opening up the chat room right now. If you have a question or a comment on the phone line, hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. If you have a question or a comment within the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one quickly in Blog Talk. And we're going to put some links in the chat room right now for the information we will be going over. For the individuals who are new to the broadcast, we have 3 broadcasts on a weekly basis. On joh-ah Monday nights, of course, it's AKANFO NANASOM, ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, where we're dealing with the Akan, specifically the Akan expression of ancestral religion of Nanasom. And we're going to get into that on Abinada. Tuesdays, we have Ojida. Ojida means purification in the Akan language, but also in the language of ancient Kamit and Kanat, Nubia. It also means a celebration of purification. So we deal with the purification of our culture, our ancestral religious practice in general, no matter what group we come from as Apuraikani people, wherever we exist in the world. We deal with the purification of our culture, Jida meaning purification. The ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance is the essence of Apuraikani, or African ancestral religion, which we use the term Nanasom to reference Apuraikani, or African ancestral religion. In essence, it is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. So that means through ritual we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we restore balance to our lives by rejecting those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and therefore realign ourselves with order. So through a ritual practice, we ritually incorporate law and ritually restore balance. Those are the expansive and contracted poles of ancestral religion. We align ourselves to the Supreme Being, the Great Mother and the Great Father, Nyamewa and Nyame, as we call them in the Akan tradition, Amenet and Amen, as they're called in ancient Kamit and Kanata ancestral language, Mawu and Lisan, Vodun, and so forth. We align ourselves with the Great Mother and Great Father through the agency of the Obosom and the Nananom Nsamafo, of the Deities, the spirit forces in creation, and the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of our direct blood circle. So that is ancestral religious culture. That is the foundation, and through Ojida purification, we operationalize that process. Purification, or Ojida, operationalizes the process of ritually incorporating law and ritually restoring balance. So this is why we say Ojida operationalizes Nanasom. Purification operationalizes Apuraikani ancestral religion. The ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. So this is what we deal with on Tuesdays, Benada, Abinada, Jida, purifying concepts, cosmology, philosophy regarding our ancestral religious culture, ritual practices, and so forth, clearing up the misinformation that has come from individuals in the Western Hemisphere, of course the whites and their offspring, but even our people in the Western Hemisphere who have been brainwashed with misinformation by the whites and their offspring, and also the misinformation coming from our people on the continent of Africa, Africa, who've been corrupted and infected over the past 1,000 plus years with Islam and Christianity and various forms of white culture. They've incorporated these corruptions, and therefore their presentation of ancestral religious culture and ritual practice is infected. And if you don't understand that when you see it, it appears to be traditional, but in reality, they've woven in false concepts. So there are some individuals promoting misinformation on the continent that gets to our people here, whether we go there or they come here, and then misinformation is perpetuated. So we go into detail talking about purification of our culture. Our ancestral religious culture is born through our direct blood circle. We come into the world assigned to Obosom, deities assigned to specific ancestresses and ancestors of our direct clan. We incarnate into the world, aligned with these forces in creation. So we cannot lose a culture in reality. It is assigned to us and wired within us before we even enter the womb. So when we're born into the world, connected to certain forces in nature which affects our temperament, which affects our inclinations, we manifest certain inclinations towards certain thoughts, intentions, and actions, and manifest repulsion away from certain thoughts, intentions, entities, and so forth. It is because we have been wired with a specific mode of operating in creation, no different than plant life, animal life, and mineral life. We have a specific function executing creation, and this is the foundation of our ancestral culture and ancestral religious practice. It is inborn, innate, and intrinsic. And when we engage in ritual practice, we simply unearth that which was buried within us. So this is what we deal with on Ojira, Abinada Tuesdays with the Ojira broadcast. On Awukuda, or Akwada Wednesday, we have Egua Marketplace. We have individuals who have organizations, institutions, businesses, Afurakani people who are serving our community in a positive capacity, serving the Omayn, serving the nation, serving the Afurakani nation, which we designate as Ojira Mayn, the purified Jira Mayn nation of Afurakani people in the Western Hemisphere. So those who are serving our people in a positive capacity, our people only, of course. We have individuals come on, they talk about their businesses, organizations, and institutions, and how their ancestral religious values inform their service to the community in a positive capacity. How their philosophy of service to our community is informed by ancestral religion, informed by Nanasom. So we have individuals come on who've done interviews with us. We're going to have more individuals come on as well. In that vein, we have also published the Okan Economic Development Model. It is an economic development model rooted in ancestral religious values and culture. So we published that model when you go to the Okan Economic Development page. We will put the link in the chat room right now. It's on our Odwirafo website. You'll see that we have the list of businesses, organizations, and institutions of individuals who have come onto the show, and that list is ever growing because part of the Okan Economic Development Model that we publish, and when you go to that page, you can download that model, of course, for free. It's a free publication. You can also download the 4-part series that we did on Blog Talk dissecting that model, showing how it impacts every aspect of our lives with regard to our mindset, nation building, restoration. You can also download the video broadcast of Egua Koti, economic warfare, as well as Kwadifo Ne Amamre and self-employment and ancestral culture. So part of the model, our strategy is to starve the beast and feed the pride. That means we make an assessment on a weekly basis to determine what funds we would have wasted with the whites and their offspring, and then we starve the beast and feed the pride. We take those funds away from that white beast, starve that beast, and feed the pride, feed the business, organization, or institution of the week. We've been targeting one Afurakani business, organization, or institution per week for 52 weeks. We began in February, so we're in the midst of this process. We are targeting one per week for optimal capital infusion. So when we starve the beast and take the $10 or $15 we would have wasted with a white business, with McDonald's or Burger King, wherever we would have wasted that money, and feed the pride. Reallocate that $10 or $15 to the business of the week, the organization of the week, the institution of the week. If 1,000 of our people do that, that's a $15,000 infusion of capital into an Afro-Akani business, organization, or institution, which allows them to expand their services to us, hire people within our community to expand their services to us, and take care of their families at the same time. If we do not engage this process, which is a win-win process for us, because we're being served at a greater capacity, and the business is expanding and growing and developing and hiring and so forth, if we do not do so, if we don't follow that imperative, that cultural imperative to engage that process, then by default, we are leaving that $15,000 in the hands of our absolute enemies, the whites and their offspring. And therefore, we are financing our own oppression. So therefore, we must make that choice to starve the beast and feed the pride on a regular basis. So one business, organization, or institution per week for 52 weeks, and we've been engaged in that process since February. So you will see the list of businesses, organizations, and institutions we have supported as a community, and we ask everyone in the Afro-Akani community to support these businesses. You'll see the list of those businesses, their websites on our page. You also see the links to their interview where they sat with us and talked about their business, organization, or institution and their philosophy behind serving the community, rooted in ancestral religious values that hold to our interview. You'll see there. And, of course, you can go directly to their website and you can click and support them and share their information. We want as many people as possible engaged in this process of starving the beast and feeding the pride. We also have an Okom economic development model page on Facebook, just to make that additional link on social media so you can see that information there as well and share it with your Facebook contacts as well. So those are the three shows we have on a weekly basis. We're also, another announcement before we get started, as we talked about in our special broadcast last night, we are having our first annual Hoodoo Mayn, meaning the Hoodoo Nation Festival, coming up on October 17th. It will be in Washington, D.C. We put the link to the Hoodoo Mayn page on our website in the chat room. When you go to Odwirafo.com, O-D-W-I-R-A, F as in free, O.com, and to the Hoodoo Mayn page, you'll see an entire page where we put the information, the flyer, talking about the event. We will have an Adwoa and a marketplace and vendors selling handmade products, art, music, food. One of our vendors is a live food specialist, nutritionist, and so forth. Vegan, of course. We have people dealing with natural soaps, shea butter, cocoa butter, different things like that. People will be bringing natural herbs, roots, and so forth. A number of different vendors that will be at the place. We will be adding the itinerary to the website. The event is from 12 to 7. It's open to Afro-Akani people only, of course. In Washington, D.C., you'll see the details there. We will be doing a presentation on Hoodoo, the Akan ancestral religion in North America, how we brought our ancestral religion from West Afro-Akani during the Kwesi, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era, and we continue to practice our tradition under the form of Hoodoo, which is an Akan term, Undo, which means root medicine, root work, and so forth, but also to conjure. So it's an unbroken tradition. Hundreds of years in North America, we never lost our ancestral religious tradition. So we prove that in our book, Hoodoo People, and we also show the connection to the term Hoodoo and ritual function of Hoodoo to ancient Kamit and Kanat. Even the title of Kanat, Nubia, one of the titles is Undu, the Undu land, and the people called the Undu people. The Akhan people called ourselves that back then. And we continued that naming practice to West Afro-Akani and into the Western Hemisphere. So we'll be doing a presentation based upon our book, but then we will have a couple of other presenters as well, dealing with natural health, dealing with Hoodoo, and so forth. So we will be adding those, the itinerary, as well as information about the vendors on the webpage as well. But the webpage is already up. You'll see the flyer on the webpage. You can download the flyer, 3-page flyer. You can share that on your Facebook accounts and so forth. We did create a Hoodoo Nation Festival page on Facebook as well, so you can like that page. We appreciate that if you like the page and share that information. This is going to be a yearly festival, an annual festival, of course, showcasing our ancestral religious practices, our ancestral ritual practices born from our blood circles. We are not dependent on anyone outside of our blood circle to reestablish our ancestral religious practices right where we stand upon Asase Afua, the great Earth Mother. We're not dependent on traveling to the continent to get our religion and bring it back. We're not dependent on traveling to the Caribbean or South America to get our ancestral religion and bring it back. It has always been here. It's been here in this region of Asase Afua, the Earth Mother. It's been within our blood circle, coming directly from our ancestors and ancestors. So we are going to be honoring that at this all-day festival. Of course, family-friendly festival, of course, so you can bring your children as well, all ages. You can shop, you can eat, you can shop with the vendors, you can eat, you can listen to the presentation, converse with other people, network. One of the things that we are doing, there are 2 things happening. We have a few more spaces. We have about 5 more spaces for vendors. So if you are interested in being a vendor for this Hoodoo Nation Festival on October 17th, about 2.5 weeks, then you can go directly to the site. The vendor application is on the site. We provide the 6-foot table and 2 chairs for you. The vendor fee is $25. We have about 5 spaces left. So you can do that as soon as possible. You can go directly to the page and fill out the application, email it to us. Email is on the bottom of the application, and submit your vendor fee right there on the site. Also, we are publishing the Hoodoo Nation Journal for that event. Everyone who comes to the event will receive a copy of the journal. We will have information in there about Hoodoo, articles and so forth. We also have the list of all of the vendors. In addition to that, we are having ad space, so if you would like to add your business, organization, or institution, if you would like to purchase ad space in the journal, then you can do that as well. We have a 1/4 of a page, a 1/2 page, and a full page. You can purchase. You have those options. The 1/4 page is $25. The half page advertisement is $35, and the full page advertisement is $50. We need to get those in as soon as possible, and we have a deadline for tomorrow. Really, tonight and into tomorrow morning and so forth, for the people who listen to tomorrow morning to the broadcast, the archives and so forth, because we need to get everything we need to get in. When you send the JPEG file, you want to put a personal ad in there just to support what we're doing, or put a personal ad in talking about culture and so forth, because you know it's going to get into the hands of thousands of our people exponentially. Or if you want to put your business, organization, or institution, or study group, or whatever you have, if you would like to add that, you can purchase that ad space. We need to get the JPEG files in as soon as possible so we can have the printing done. We do the printing ourselves on our own printers in-house, just like we print our 16 books that we have published. We do our own printing and so forth, in color and in-house on our own printers. So we need to get everything going so that we can order all of the additional supplies, ink and covers and paper and everything else, so we can have the publications ready for the event, even prior to the event, just in case there are delays in shipping of ink and covers and everything else. So we need to get those in as soon as possible. So if you would like to purchase ad space, if you like a business card size, we have 3 sizes: 1/4 page, 1/2 page, and a full page. So whichever one you would like, you can go directly to the website, the Hoodoo Mayn page on the website, and you can connect there. So that's coming up, and we'll continue to bring that up, and you can share that information on your social media site. So I'm going to get into this topic for tonight. AKANFO NANASOM, ancient authentic Akan ancestral religion. And as we talked about earlier, on Monday night's joh-ah, we focused specifically on the Akan expression. Number one, because we are Akan ourselves, but number two, because of the misinformation that has been put forward regarding Akan cosmology, Akan ancestral religion, Akan culture, Akan philosophy, and so forth in the Western Hemisphere, by the whites and their offspring, as well as misinformed Afro-Akani people, and from the continent of Africa, Africa, where you have individuals who are Akan, but then they've been infected by white culture, woven those infections into the presentation of the culture, and therefore misinform our people about the nature of Akan culture and philosophy. As we talked about earlier, the Akan traditions survived the Nusuo Ketie, the great perversity, the enslavement era. So even though we crossed the waters with the same people, we crossed the waters, we continue to speak to one another in our languages, we continue to become possessed by the Obosom, the forces in nature, we continue to communicate with the great mother and great father, we continue to communicate with our ancestresses and ancestors, our Nananon Nsamanfo. They empowered us to wage war against the whites and their offspring, to bring it into enslavement. It was the wars that were waged by those who freed themselves from enslavement and burned down plantations, killed the whites and their offspring consistently over decades, that brought enslavement to an end. It wasn't the whites and their offspring just deciding they were going to end it, or because of the Civil War. The Gullah Wars led to the Civil War. We talk about that in some detail in the book, the Hoodoo People book. But again, the Hoodoo tradition is the Akan tradition brought to North America. Later on, the term Hoodoo would just be used generically, talking about any African tradition or even in a negative sense. But when we came to these shores, we brought our Hoodoo, Iooh religious practices with us. So the same is true in Central America, South America, the Caribbean, and so forth. So we still have that connection. We still lay hands and heal people. We still pick herbs and roots and heal people with those. We still communicate with our ancestors and ancestors. We still get possessed by the Obosom, the forces in nature. We still align ourselves with the great mother and the great father, so we have not lost the culture. So then when we do an Sankofa, and we've done that with our publication, showing that Akan people migrated from ancient Kanat, one of the titles of ancient Nubia. Kanat meaning the first land, foremost land, land of the beginning, land, the front land, and so forth. But Khan also means to count, calculate, or reckon in the language of ancient Kanat and Kamit. The first to count, calculate, or reckon, the foundation of civilization. But Khan also meaning first, foremost, from the beginning. In the Akan language today, Khan, the root Khan of the name Akan means first or foremost. It also means to count, calculate, or reckon. The same term that we use in ancient Kanat Nubia to designate the land and the people, the Kanat land or the Kanit land, and the Kanit people. We migrated west a couple of thousand years ago after the fall of Kamit. We reestablished the Kanat Empire, the so-called Ganat Empire, a couple of thousand years ago. About 1,000 years after that, we migrated towards the forest belt and reestablished Akana civilization in the regions of today's Republic of Ghana and Ivory Coast. And hundreds of years later, some of us were taken from that region and forced into the Western Hemisphere during the enslavement era. So therefore, we show that migration specifically, culturally, ritually, spiritually. Of course, there's genetic proof that simply confirms what we already know. There's archaeological proof that confirms what we already know. So we show that migration to show we are the exact same people with the exact same name and the exact same ritual practice. Not only is Hoodoo in North America, Ndu in West Africa, meaning the same thing, root work and conjure and so forth, but in ancient Kamit and Kanat, Ndu meaning root, medicine, ritual practice, also meaning to conjure spirit, also meaning to give offerings to the deities. Ndu means all of that, and we prove that in the book showing the Medu through the hieroglyphs and so forth. So this is what we're dealing with, and we want to get into the topic Yaht and Yah, or Iooht and Iooh, Adwo and Adwoa, female and male moon deities, moon divinities. Of course, today is joh-ah. The Da the day of Adwo and Dwoa, the day of the moon, spiritual force that animates the moon. So we've done a broadcast on Adwoa and Adwo, which is Auset and Ausar in ancient Kamit. They're called, just like Auset is called Essi in Coptic. She's also called Essi in Akhan, but then she's also called Adwoa. When she's operating through the moon, she's called Adwoa. When Ausar or Awusi or Asir, as called in ancient Kamit, Awusi in Akan, when he's operating in connection with the sun, he's Awusi, Awusir, and so forth. But when he's operating in connection with the moon, then he's called Adwo. So you have Adwoa and Adwo. The root being joh. Joh meaning to cool in the Akan language. The cool, that cooling force, that magnetic force is the moon. So it is the joh-ah, the cool da, or the cool day, the moon day, the day of the moon. Moon day or Monday. So we want to get into this. We started talking about some of that last night because it was a Osorane Bere, a red moon last night. We talked about some of that last night, but we wanted to go a little bit further simply because joh, Adwoa, and Adwo, sometimes people don't understand that there's a female moon divinity as well as a male moon divinity in ancient Kamit. And this goes to culture. It goes to ancestrally inherited culture, which we talked about last night and we began to speak on earlier. We inherit our ancestral culture directly from our ancestresses and ancestors. We deal with these forces in nature. They still communicate with us. They possess us no matter where we migrate in the world. So we know who these divinities are. So when we're engaged in research, which is simply supplemental, it is not primary. The primary knowledge of the Obosom, of the Orisha, the Vodou, and so forth, the divinities, the Ntoro, Ntorotu, the so-called Neteru, Neteru, and so forth, the primary foundational knowledge of them is our direct experience with them through spirit possession and spirit communication. Akom and Nkom, as it is called in Akan and as well as ancient Kamit, spirit possession and spirit communication. When we engage in that process consciously, then we get to understand and learn who these divinities are, no different than when you communicate with your family members, communicate with your siblings, your mother, father, children, brothers and sisters, and so forth, and have a direct communication with them. In the same fashion, we have a direct communication with our Nananom Nsamafo ancestresses and ancestors, and with the Obosom, the spirits that animate the sun, moon, stars, black substance of space, earth, mother, oceans, rivers, atmosphere, thunder and lightning, fire, and so forth. These various forces in nature animating the physical aspects of nature. Just like you have a physical body, but your spirit animates your physical body. The spirits that animate the suns, moons, and stars in every aspect of creation are the children of the great mother and great Inyamewa and Inyame, Amenet and Amen. And they are the Obosom, the forces in nature as they're called in Akan tradition. So we know who they are. So when we engage in research, we already know who they are through experience with them. So when we engage in research, we have a full perspective on what we're looking at. We understand what has been published, what is seen, what is written down. We also understand what has not been published or what has not been focused on. If you have a Eurocentric mindset, the only thing you can understand or recognize is what you can see that has been written. So when you have people who are claiming to be spiritually grounded or claiming to be scholars and so forth and researching this kind of information about ancestral culture and religion and philosophy and ancient Kamit and so forth, but they have no experience, then they really have no knowledge of what they are researching at all. They're just Eurocentric Egyptologists in blackface. The people of ancient Kamit did not develop a system, a ritual practice based on writing some things and drawing some things and memorizing a few things and then just sharing the information. The deities didn't come about, their knowledge of the deities didn't come about in that manner. They came about the way they have always come about, through direct spirit possession. When you learn about Tahuti or learn about Seshat or learn about Ausar and Auset, we didn't just draw up deities and name them and color them with certain specific colors and start telling stories. That's what the whites and their offspring do. They have to manufacture something because they cannot communicate with the forces in nature. The forces in nature possess our people. They will tell us through possession what their name is. They will show us through possession and communication what their sacred color is, what ritual incantation should be uttered with regard to them to provoke their energy in a proper fashion. They show us that directly, and we incorporate that knowledge and act upon that knowledge. So we have a direct experience with them. So, for example, when we talked about the male deity Ma'ah and his relationship with the female divinity Ma'at, many people have never heard of the male deity Ma'ah because the whites and their offspring typically do not focus on that divinity. Does that mean that this fourth in creation, that's one half of the divine balance of creation, the expansive pole of divine order, which is governed by Ma'ah and Ma'at, that fourth in creation that's keeping the planets and everything balanced, does that mean that he doesn't exist because some crackers didn't write too much about him? So we just can't talk about him because the crackers didn't write about him, and you can't find copious amounts of information about him, so we have to dismiss him and say he doesn't exist or he's not part of the cosmology. Only Negroes who are brainwashed with the whites and their offspring's misinformation talk like that. But when you know who Ma'ah is because you invoke him on a regular basis, then you understand who he is. So when you find a reference for the divinity, you know exactly what they're talking about because you've incorporated this force in nature and his influence into your life. The same is true with the female moon divinity, Yaht or Iaht or Iooht, as well as the male divinity, Yah or Joh. So let's get to that right now. When you look at the divinity of the moon itself is called Yah, Yahu, and then in the Coptic dialect, Yahu becomes Yo. So you see it spelled with the reed, the forearm and the open hand, and then the symbol of the tethered rope, and then sometimes the chick. So that's A-A-H-U, or sometimes people put Y-A-H-U or Y-A-H, Yah or Yahu, and that Yahu becomes Yo, I-O-O-H in Coptic dialect. So Yahu becomes Yah or Yahu becomes Yo or Joh. And you'll see that spelled in Coptic. We have that in our particular article. We put the link in the article. We have an article on the Obosom Adwoa, the Obosom of Jodah, Monday. This is the female divinity of Monday, which is Auset, called Adwoa. Let's go to that document real quick. We just put the link in the chat room. First, we're going to scroll down real quick, and we show, and I want to give you the page number so you can see the specific Iooht on page 12. And if you look on page 12, we show the Iooht, we show the hieroglyphs spelling out the name of the divinity. So the term Yah, I-A-H, is the major title of the moon in Kamit. And then we show the Iooht for that. This term Yah or Yahu was pronounced and written Yo in Coptic, I-O-O-H. So by the time you get to Coptic, the dialectical variant is different. It becomes Yo. The pronunciation of Yo in Coptic is both Yo and Joh. This term Joh, describing the moon, is represented by Joh in the Akan language, the tree language, representing the Obosom operating through the moon, Adwo. So this is why it's Joh-da, the day, da, of Joh, of the moon, the cool divinity. So the exact same term referencing the moon itself, Joh in Coptic, the late Kamit dialect, is the exact same term we use for Joh representing the moon in the Akan language and the day of the week of the moon. And even to go further, a descriptive title of the moon is Nana. So when you see the crescent moon, that the people will, once the crescent moon shows up, they say Nana has shown up. That's a descriptive title, a title dealing with elderhood and so forth, elderhood and so forth. So they would call the moon Nana, and once people see the crescent moon in Akan culture, they would say specific prayers and so forth to the crescent moon, the spirit that animates the crescent moon. And in fact, let me get the real quick. We're going to pull up a link just to give you some information on that. If you look, for example, in the book African Religion Defined by Anthony Ephraim Donkor, who is a person from Ghana, Akhan, as well as Juan, talking about the crescent moon and so forth in his book African Religion Defined. There's a couple of pages you can check that information out. African Religion Defined. But even before we get to that, now, people born on joh-ah in Akan culture, a female is called Adwoa, a male is called joh. Kwa means the servant or subject of. Joh, the divinity operating through the moon. So joh is the servant of Joh or Adwo. And then Adwoa is also female, the servant of the divinity Adwo and Adwoa. So anybody born on Monday, joh or Kojo, sometimes called Jojo, and then Adwoa, you know they're born on joh-ah on a Monday, governed by Ausar and Auset operating through the moon. Now, the moon itself is an entity, force in creation. Just like the sun itself is an entity, it is a force in creation. We call it the Oriya in Akan. It's called Aten, Atenit in ancient Kamit. That entity itself is a force. But then you have other Obosom that govern and operate through that entity. So there's more. That's why we say Adwo and Dwoa are major divinities that operate through the moon. So look at the Earth Mother, for example. The Earth Mother, the fertile Earth Mother, is Asase Afua. Asase means earth. Asase Afua is the fertile Earth Mother. Then you have Asase Yaht, which is dealing with the aspect of Earth where we bury the dead and so forth. A stern, person dealing with justice, a spiritual force dealing with justice and so forth. We have the Earth Mother. But within this planet, there are different divinities that operate within the planet. You have spirits that operate through the ocean, the river, the mountainous region, the desert region, the fertile earth and so forth, the red earth, the black earth, of course, like, black earth dealing with Ausar and red earth dealing with Set and so forth. Obosom operating through the atmosphere, thunder, lightning, fire, and so forth. So you have a number of divinities. The core of earth, where you have Oboade, Ptah, and so forth. The mantle with Atem, Odomankoma. You have a number of divinities operating within this ore. The same is true with regard to the moon. The same is true with regard to the sun. So this is where sometimes things get mixed up because the white offspring will say, well, Ra, his symbol is the sun disk, so therefore Ra is the god of the sun. He's the sun god. And they'll say Ra'et is the sun goddess. In reality, Ra and Ra'et are the creator and creatress. They created the sun and all of the other stars and created everything in existence. So they are not the sun god and sun goddess. Aten and Atenit are the sun god and the sun goddess. But Ra and Ra'et will utilize the sun as a physical transmitter of their spiritual energy. No different than if you pick up a phone. If you pick up a phone and speak through the cell phone, you will utilize that instrument to transfer your communication to somebody 1,000 miles away from you. You're speaking through that instrument. That instrument is one that projects your communication, projects those electrons and so forth out there, the signal, so that somebody else can pick it up. So you're using it as a transmitter. Ra and Ra'et utilize the sun as well as other stars as a transmitter of their spiritual energy in the same fashion. So the Aten and Atenit, male and female forces that make up the sun itself, spiritual forces, but they can be utilized by their great grandparents, Ra and Ra'et. The same is true of joh-ah and joh-ah, Yaht and Yaht, Iaht and Yaht, if you want to pronounce it like that, the female divinity of the moon, the male divinity of the moon. You have different forces in nature that will utilize the moon to transmit their spiritual energy. That includes Tahuti, that includes Kensu, so-called Khonsu, called Hensu and Ayensu and Akhan, that includes Tepnut and so forth in certain capacities they utilize, but it also, we're dealing with Ausar and Auset as well when they operate through the moon. When Ausar and Auset operate in connection with Ra and Ra'et, then Ausar is called Ausar Ra, and he's operating through the sun. Major force in creation, but he's utilizing the sun as a transmitter of his energy. He's called Ausar Ra. When Auset is operating in harmony with Ra'et, she's called Auset Ra'et, C. And she's in connection with the sun as well. So he's called Awusi or Asi and Esi in Akhan, operating through the sun. And people born on Sunday or the day of Awusida are called Kwesi and Akoswia or Esi because they're named after Awusi and Esi. Ausar and Auset operating through the sun. But when they take their energy and send it through the moon, they're called Adwo and Dwoa because they're moving through that cool joh energy, that cool rooted energy. They're utilizing that magnetic force of the moon, operating through that, and so forth. It is akin to spirit possession. We're talking about forces in nature, just like they possess our people. Someone is playing ritual drums, they begin to dance, spin around, they get possessed. That means the spirit enters the body of the person and utilizes their body to communicate with the community at ritual. Force in nature animating the sun, for example, gets inside of the body of the person who is possessed and then speaks to the body of the person, lays hands on people to heal and so forth, shows them how to draw symbols like Adinkra and Veves and Medutu and so forth, teaches them the language, teaches them their name and so forth, and then when the spirit leaves the person's body, the person comes back to themselves. So a person is engaged in that process. Sometimes it's akin to when you're driving your car, and if somebody gets in the car and they want to take the driver's seat for a second and say you move over to the passenger side, or even if you get in the back seat, you're still aware, you still see where the car is going, you're looking out the window, the windshield and so forth, but somebody else is driving the vehicle. First, there was just one person in the vehicle, that was you. You are akin to a spirit, and the vehicle is akin to the body. Your spirit, you are inside the car. Your spirit is in the body. But then someone comes to get inside of the vehicle with you, and they take control of the wheel, and of course you allow them to take control of the wheel if it's somebody who's in harmony with you and so forth. And when you get in the back seat and allow them to drive for a while, then they drive, and they communicate with the other drivers, and they take control of the vehicle. And then when they leave the vehicle and you get back in the driver's seat, you come back to yourself. And this is what is happening with spirit possession. When the person has taken control of the wheel, there are two people in the vehicle. That person is not you, and you are not that person. You're just sharing space. But they happen to be wielding the control with regard to the physical space, with regard to the vehicle. The same is true when the Obosom possess our people. The same is true of when the NHOMA possess our people. When you see someone engaged in spirit possession, whether it's an ancestral spirit that's in harmony with the person, or if it's a criminal, weak, discarnate spirit who may be a relative or a non-relative, and if somebody was weak and receptive to that kind of negative energy and they get possessed by a negative type of spirit, somebody who was a criminal when they were alive, and they died in the same fashion, that same kind of negative spirit, somebody's receptive and they get possessed by such a spirit. You see a bunch of craziness happening at that point. People acting crazy, doing crazy things. But if a normal ancestral spirit who's in harmony with divine order, one of your great-great-grandmothers or great-great-great-grandfathers and so forth came to bring a message of wisdom and so forth to the community, they take up residence during ritual practice to possess, then your spirit takes the quote-unquote back seat inside the body, and they are in the driver's seat until that possession is over, and till they go back, leave the body and so forth. in the same fashion, forces in nature possess different aspects of nature. So you will have the Obosom, or the divinity Yaht, or Yaht, joh, the moon, the male moon, joh, female moon, Iooht, or Yaht. They're the actual moon. But then Ausar and Auset will take possession. We're talking about planetary possession, lunar possession, solar possession. Remember those terms, especially as we're speaking them, because later on you will hear other individuals saying the same thing. You'll understand where they got the information from. So we're talking about lunar possession, solar possession, planetary possession. Ausar and Auset, just like they can possess us, spirit can possess an animal, they can also possess a planet. They can also possess a lunar body. They can also possess a solar body. And the major spirit, Yaht and Iaht, possessed by Ausar and Auset when they're operating through the moon. So this is what's taking place. Now, before we go into some details about that, how it affects us spiritually and ritually, we want to show some information. When you read about the divinity of the moon, Yaht, and you find that information all over the net. They'll talk about the moon divinity Yaht, and they'll talk about very often him manifesting, in the new kingdom, so-called new kingdom, new empire, people named after the divinity Yaht, or Yah, Mesu, Nefertari, and Yaht-hotep, a number of different individuals with the Yah connected to their name. Of course, Yah is where they get the corruption, Jah, in so-called Hebrew and everything else. And we dealt with that in detail in our book, Iooht and Iooh, proving that Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, and so forth, none of those characters existed of any race or in any form whatsoever. That's the same is true of Buddha and Brahman, all of these fictional cartoon characters. They were not black, white, or otherwise. But you'll learn about the divinity Yaht. They'll very often talk about him being prominently found with regard to archaeological artifacts and so forth in the so-called New Empire and afterwards, but then at the close of the New Empire, you don't see as much information about him being written and put forward and so forth and promoted. Of course, when you go back to the early dynasties, you will find references to Yaht as well. And in fact, let's go into that information real quick, just so you can get a snapshot, and then we're going to get into some of the misinformation. So if you pull up, say you just Google the divinity Yaht, and you'll find this information in numerous places on the net. So for example, let's look at one of the specific sites. Okay, here's one of these random sites. And we want to show you how we can get the real information directly from our culture. So you'll see a site, Yaht, says Yaht was an ancient minor moon god, personification of the heavenly body, just as the Aten, the sun disk, was the embodiment of the sun. Like the more important moon deities, Tahuti and Khensu, with whom he merged later on. He could manifest himself as a crescent new moon, an ibis, habui bird, or a falcon. He became part of the Ausar cult, they say Osiris, in the time of the 5th dynasty, and sailed the Matet boat as Ausar. For Ausar, as a moon child divinity, according to an Auset temple chant, who comes forth to us as a babe each month, was in the care of Tahuti, of whom it was said that he lays Ausar's soul in the Matet boat by the magic of your name of Yah. And that's one of the texts. In the pyramid text of Pepi the First, the divinity Yah is referred to as the late king's brother. He was especially popular in the beginning of the New Kingdom, possibly as a result, as they would say, as Middle Eastern influences, which is, of course, nonsense. They're always trying to weave in so-called Semitic influences into ancient Kamit to say we didn't come up with anything, because they recognize, of course, that Yah is where they get the term Jah from, and Yah in so-called Hebrew and so forth in the Bible. So they had to pretend like, well, Yah must have come from them. They didn't it didn't come from the people of ancient Kamit. It comes from, the Semitic people, and they brought it, which of course is absolute nonsense. There's no such thing as a Semite. Yah has been the moon. Yah or joh has been the moon for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Yah and Iaht, and we're going to get into that. Of course, when names like Yamesu, so-called Amos, meaning Yah is born, and Yah Hotep, Yah is content, were frequent in the new empire, so-called New Kingdom. In the Pert Imheru, Runu Pert Imheru, so-called Book of the Dead, Ausar is described as shining forth in the splendor of Yah. Yah and his cult are but rarely referred to after the early New Kingdom, according to the late period teachings of Amenemhotep. Yah is one of the avenging deities who will establish crimes against evildoers. And so when you see the teachings of Amenemhotep, one of the quotes is, when someone acquires something by means of a false oath, he will be fettered by the manifested might of Yah, talking about the moon divinity. Yah later becoming joh and so forth, in Coptic, and joh, Adwo, and Akhan. So this is the kind of information you will find about the divinity. And that's it. So when you read about this, the whites and their offspring will say, well, Yah is the moon divinity. He was later connected to Tahuti and Shamsu and merged with them. But then they'll also say he has his own separate existence because they don't know the difference between planetary possession, lunar possession, solar possession, when divinities possess and operate in concert with other divinities, working together. It's like somebody getting in your car. That person does not become you. You all are working together. And if you sat in the back seat, but you gave some direction as well and some information to the person driving, now you're working together in the same body. But you're two separate and distinct entities. That same possession, lunar possession, planetary possession, solar possession, and so forth, takes place with the divinity. So when Ausar and Auset possess the moon, possess Yah and Iaht, and you see a title of Ausar being Ausar Yah, Ausar operating through the moon, Ausar utilizing the moon itself, that lunar orb, as a transmitter of Ausarian energy that bathes the planet and connects with our people. So he's engaged in that process, Auset operating through the moon as well. So the whites and their offspring could say, well, that's who Yah is, and because of what they have read, they'll say, well, there's no female lunar divinity in ancient Kamit. All of the divinities of the moon are actually male, and it wasn't until the Greeks came along that they started calling Auset, or Isis, the goddess of the moon, connected with Selene and so forth, being a moon divinity in foreign, cultures and so forth. So it was the Greeks, the foreigners, who brought this notion that the moon was a goddess. But prior to their coming into Kamit, there was no moon goddess. There was only a moon god, and they will lay out all of the texts that they have found dealing with the divinity Yah, such as this one talking about Pepi the First and 5th Dynasty texts, and the text from the Pert Imheru and so forth, with their Short Pyramid texts and late period texts and everything else, all pointing to Yah, and they said, therefore, there was no female moon goddess, and that's the influence of the Greeks. Then the black people who follow the whites and their offspring, who in reality worship the whites and their offspring, but call themselves scholarly, will repeat that nonsense. So when someone talks about Auset being connected with the moon, Ausar being connected with the moon, but Auset, the moon being a feminine force as well, they will say, oh, no, you haven't done any study. Where are your citations? Where's your research and so forth? That's not true. In ancient Kamit, there was only a moon divinity, because they're simply aping the whites and their offspring. They trust and put their faith in the whites and their offspring. However, when you have primary knowledge, because you deal directly with these divinities, you know that there's a male and female force that governs the moon, and then Ausar and Auset also operate through the moon, through lunar possession as well, to transmit their energy in that fashion. So when you see Yah, you already know there's a Yaht, a Iaht, or joh-ah, Adwoa. You already know that because you deal with these divinities. So it's just a matter of time before that citation is found. We didn't write down every single thing in Kamit, or we didn't write them all down at the same time. Different reasons for different things. It's impossible to write out every aspect of the culture. But when we get possessed by these divinities and deal with them and evoke them, we know who they are. So then you listen to these individuals repeating that kind of misinformation. But then you'll find, if somebody does some basic research, with many of our people have not done, you'll find that at some point the whites and their offspring did find a reference to the female divinity, Yaht. It's a reference that's not very well known. So let's pull up that reference. We're going to pull up two of those references real quick. I want to take you directly to the page. And let's do it in Google real quick. And just give me a second. All right. There's an article you find, if you type in Egyptian moon goddess menstruation, menstrual hygiene and women's health in ancient Egypt. You find somebody writing about menstruation in ancient Kamit, and they're mentioning a number of different things. And then there's this one slight reference. They'll say in ancient Egypt, the moon was closely tied to the ibis-headed god Thoth, Tahuti, who was also regarded as the inventor of writing. A pyramid inscription of 2300 BC makes the moon equal to Tefnut, the daughter of the creator god Atum. Then during the Greek-Roman period, 3rd century through the 4th century CE, the Egyptian Nekabet was associated with the Greek moon goddess Selene. So this is what most people have. Then they give a very small reference. In a small temple of Ramesu II in Abydos or Abju, archaeologists found for the first time a picture of a female moon godhead. As far as Egypt is concerned, we can at least speak of a gradual, quote-unquote, feminizing of the moon through the centuries. So that's misinformation with regard to a gradual feminizing of the moon through the centuries. First, prior to some archaeologists finding some evidence of a female moon godhead, they would say, well, the gods of ancient Kamit the moon gods were all male. Then they find this piece, but they still say, well, it was a feminizing. It happened in the, later periods and so forth. So therefore, they began to feminize the moon, and that was a political decision. This is the way the whites and their offspring approach tradition. We know who the moon divinity is because we deal directly with her, get possessed by her, communicate with her, invoke her on a daily basis, and this through our various cultures. So let's go to specifically the text that they're talking about. And once you analyze this information and go through this information, and we show it in the Akan tradition as well as a living culture, then you can confirm that ritually, confirm that through a living culture with the same name of the same divinities and so forth. And of course, it aligns with what is written in these ancient texts. So if you look at the enigmatic netherworld books of the Solar Osirian Unity, written by John Coleman Darnell, and the only reason we pull this out, not because there's some great source, but this is one of the sources that you'll find them with the transliteration of a specific text, as well as the translation of the text, just so you can see the name of the female divinity, Yaht. They mention on page 355, for the combination of the concepts expressed by lines 3 to 4, and they're talking about this specifically the Ntafi Mu, Nha, Watket, and it's a whole piece. A portion of the Bandel text over the processional scene on the southern portion of the front interior wall in the court of the temple of Ramesu II at Abju, Abydos provides a parallel. So just like the previous text talked about archaeologists found in the tomb of Ramesu II in Abydos or Abju, is reference to a female godhead. Here is the text in the, not the tomb, the temple of Ramesu II at Abju, Abydos. The Bandu text is over the processional scene on the southern portion of the front interior wall in the court of the temple of Ramesu II in Abju, Abydos. And the text says, the translation, now as for a king, he is divine seed, for he is one in the necropolis as he was upon the earth, manifesting himself as he will, like the moon goddess, like Iaht. And it's not Yah, it's Iaht. You'll find in other texts when the king, the Ptah, the Amsu, is identified with Yah or Yo, the moon, in certain capacity. In this particular text, he's identified with the female divinity Yaht or Yaht, joh-ah, and so forth. So, many people have missed that specific piece. Why did they miss that specific piece? And it's still not popular. You'll look all over the internet and you'll find most texts talking about the moon divinity is the male divinity Yah. You won't find any mention anywhere of Yaht. You really have to dig. What will make you dig? What will make us dig for that information? The reason we dug for that information is because we already knew who this divinity is, because we invoke this divinity in Akan culture. Yah, of course, becomes joh in Coptic. joh-ah is the female, joh is the male, and we still invoke these divinities. So when we were compiling the information about the Obosom, the divinities that govern the 7 days of the week who were named after, we already knew it's a male and female divinity, Adwo and Dwoa. We knew they would exist in ancient Kamit because these are the same forces in nature our people were possessed by. The same moon that we looked at in ancient Kamit is the same moon we look at now. The same sun that we looked at in ancient Kamit is the same sun we look at now. The same spirits that animate the moon are the same spirits that animate and possess our people now. The same spirits that animate the sun are the same spirits that animate and possess our people now. So we already knew who Adwo and Dwoa were, and we knew we would find them, and we looked and dig for the information, and of course, found the information. If you don't have experience, you won't have any basis upon which to search for the kind of information that needs to be found, and you won't find it, or you'll gloss right by it. As many of our people, as we said earlier, gloss right by the fact that the male divinity Ma'ah is the balance of the female divinity Ma'at, and he's central to the balance in all of creation. Without Ma'ah, you don't have any balance in creation. You can't just have Ma'at without Ma'ah, and it's not abstract. He's a force in nature that we invoke. So when we did that broadcast, we proved who he is in ancient Kamit, but also how he manifests today in our Akan culture, in the Yoruba tradition as well. So, talking about the Ibeji and so forth. The same is true here. We have this living culture. So let's talk about who Adwo and Dwoa are functionally in our Akan culture and how they're connected, of course, Ausar and Auset. So the root term joh in general means to cool. It's talking about the function of the moon, that magnetic cooling function of the moon, as opposed to the radiant, fiery, blasting energy, radiant energy, hot energy of the sun. The moon has that cool magnetic energy. So it's joh. It's cool, to calm, to quiet, to be at rest, and so forth. But joh also means to cry aloud, to lament, to wail, because it's the release of that water. We talked about the release of water and sound through wailing, through crying, and so forth, whether it's at a funeral, ritually, when you have people who wail to release that energy, but also with regards to healing. The first responders, as we talked about, with regard to healing, is water and sound. So the crying and wailing of joh, Adwo, meaning to cry out, to allow, to lament, to wail, and so forth. It's also a title of respect. It also means root, like a root up under the ground, but root also meaning foundation and so forth. So this is what joh is talking about. Then when you look in the language of ancient Kamit, you'll find that Yah, pronounced joh in Coptic, is talking about the moon, but then joh also means plant life, specific plant life, which is talking about the roots. Joh also means to cry out and to wail. So the same terms in Akan dealing with the moon, joh, Adwo and Dwoa, meaning to cry out, to wail. Joh also meaning root, talking about root, but also foundation. You find those exact same meaning, all of them in the language of ancient Kamit, also being the title of the moon as well. Now, when you look at that, and you look at Adwoa and Joh, we're going to skip down to our article. We're going to get to the section talking specifically about the moon. From the Meru text, the text of the Ptah, the king Pepi, the words which the Untoru deities speak concerning Pepi, and they say about him, this is Heru coming forth from Ha. Behold, Pepi is the Untoru, the deity, Ucha, the son of Ucha, the issue of Uchat. Strong is Pepi, strong is Pepi, strong is the eye of Heru in Anu. Pepi lives, the eye of Heru lives in Anu. So they're talking about the eye of Heru, the Ucha, Uchoa, and there's a connection between Uchoa and Adwoa, Joh, and so forth, and Joh, meaning the moon. Remember, the right eye of the sun, right eye of Ra is the sun, the left eye of Ra is the moon. And then when Heru becomes in charge, ruling the world, the right eye of Heru is the sun, and the left eye of Heru is the moon. And the moon is called, in this context, as being an eye, is Ucha. The male version is Ucha or Uchau, and the female version is Uchat or Uchaut. We say the left eye of Heru is the moon. In the cosmology, in Heru's battle with Set tore the left eye of Heru into pieces. Heru then goes to Tahuti. And again, when we're talking about the eye of Heru, he's utilizing the moon as a physical transmitter of his spiritual energy. So he's utilizing the moon as a quote-unquote eye or a transmitter. Again, this is lunar possession, a spirit force in creation, animating a physical force, in this case, the lunar body to project his energy. So, Set in the story rips out the eye of Heru, tears it into pieces, the left eye of Heru, talking about the moon. Heru then goes to Tahuti, the Obosom of wisdom, and Tahuti heals the eye. This healed or reconstructed eye of Heru, the lunar eye, of course, is eventually given by Heru to Ausar in order to resurrect Ausar from the dead. The Uchat or Uchaut thus becomes a very powerful talisman of healing. So you'll see that big eye of Heru on necklaces and everything else as a talisman for healing. People in ancient Kamit wore pendants of the Uchat or Uchaut in order to ward off illness and for protection from evil spirits. Moreover, the reconstituted eye is also the basis of the mathematical fractional system in ancient Kamit. And we show that fractional system, the different parts of the eye that were quote-unquote torn up. And of course, when the moon is going from the new moon to the crescent moon to the half moon to the three-quarter moon to the full moon and then to the three-quarter on the other side and the half and the crescent and back to the new moon, you're dealing with fractions. So we utilize the lunar phases to fractions and recognize that that continuity. We show that image. Hold on one second. Give me 1 second. Okay, so, and we show that image there. Then we show Heru is the son of Ausar and Auset, Joh and Adwoa. In the Meru text, as you recall, when they're talking about Pepi and he's identified with Heru, operating as Heru, the text itself says Pepi is the Untoru, the divinity Ucha. He is the son of Uchau and the issue of Uchaut. He's the son of the male divinity, Uchaw, and the issue of the female divinity, Uchaut. What is that talking about? As the eye of Heru. Why is he called the eye? He's a child of these two eyes. Adwo and Adwoa is Uchaw and Uchaut, talking about the eye, talking about the moon. This is one reason the text refers to Pepi as Heru. All kings were identified with Heru as the patron divinity of divine kingship. And Heru as Ucha, the son of Ucha and the issue of Uchait. This is also why it states that the eye of Heru is strong. The general definition of the word Ucha is strength, vitality, health, to be strong. When you talk about that strength, Ucha, Ucho, and then we talk about joh, meaning a root, like a root up under the ground, like ginger root and so forth, but also root meaning foundation, the foundation of your power, the foundation of the strength and so forth. When you look at the moon and the magnetic pull of the moon affects the rising of the tides on Earth, of course, but also the rising of the tides of water within your body. And when your water levels become high and you're full of water and so forth, you become more introverted and so forth. And when the water levels decrease, you become more dried out and so forth, and more externalized. But that magnetic pull, that magnetism, gravity, and so forth is your grounding. So this is where that connection between joh, meaning root, strong, grounding, strength, vitality, and so forth comes from. So, and another title of Heru when he's operating through the moon is Heru Yaht or Heru Yo. The moon Yo or Yaht is also Ucha or Ucho, which is the eye, which is strong. Those two words are variations of one another, functionally and phonetically. And then we show the Medutu for that, for the term for the moon, the female moon divinity, Uchaut, with a T, Uchaut, and then the male moon divinity, the left eye, and so forth is Uchaut, that is Adwoa and Adwo in Akhan, same divinity. Now, and then we show finally Adwoa, Ujao, Awo, and Awo, Esi and Auset, and so forth. We're talking about descriptive titles of Ausar and Auset operating through the moon. Then we have a couple of more, just to give even a further point to that. Uchaut means the moon, the left eye, but Uchaut also means eye in general. So the moon is associated with an eye in ancient Kamit. Well, do we have another confirmation of that in another fashion? Well, in the language of ancient Kamit, the word ani, A-N-I, any means eye. In the Akhan language, any means eye, A-N-I. So that's another word for eye. One word for eye in Kamit is Uchaut. Another word for eye in Kamit is any, A-N-I. But here's the other piece. There's also a title of Ausar and a title of Auset. One of his titles is A-N-I. It's a title of Ausar when he operates through the moon, Ani. And then there's Anit, A-N-I-T, a title of Auset when she operates through the moon. So again, you have the term for the eye, N-E, but then you also have the term for eye with Uchaut in ancient Kamit. Uchaut, meaning eye, is also Uchaut, meaning the moon. N-E, meaning eye, is also N-E, a title of Ausar when he operates through the moon. And Enit, meaning eye, is also Enit, a title of Auset when she operates through the moon. So once again, you have Ausar and Auset as Eni and Enit. And then, of course, Enit or Anita or Anita, somebody named Anita that you know, named after Anit. You have Ani and Anit, Ausar and Auset operating through the moon. So they're called Ani and Anit, meaning the two left eyes, the male and female aspect of the left eye of Ra, left eye of Heru, and so forth, the moon. But then they're also called Adwo and Acho. In Akan, Adwoa and Adwo. So we show those linguistics in the article just to prove specifically that we're talking about the same thing. The reason we can look for that kind of information is because we deal with Adwo and Adwoa on a regular basis, especially those who are born on the days of Adwo and Adwoa. They have a krawa, a soul, a divine consciousness that is governed by these divinities. So this is why they're called Kwajo and Adwoa, and even those who are born on Sundays, Kwesi and Akoksuya or Esi, born in connection with Ausar and Auset, have a kra, a soul, a divine consciousness, a krawa, which is governed by these divinities. When you have that kind of force governing you, then you're in alignment with that force, and you communicate with them, they communicate with you. And that's the same with everybody born on the different days, the divinities that govern those different days, that govern their head region and so forth, their kra, their krawa, their soul, their divine consciousness. We align with these forces in nature. They are primarily responsible for the direction of our lives. Force in nature dwelling in our head region is colored by the energy and infused with the energy of the Obosom that governs that particular planetary, solar, or lunar orb that governs it. Then, of course, you can still deal with the other divinities as well. Just like you have two parents, your mother and father, who are primarily responsible for your development and your well-being and so forth. But if they have sisters and brothers, your aunts and uncles, they will also participate in guiding you, admonishing you, helping you get back on the right track when you've gotten on the wrong track, hoping to heal you if you cut yourself or whatever. You can communicate with them as well. And sometimes they will take care of you as well. But your mother and father are your primary caretakers. The divinity that governs your head is your primary caretaker. But the relatives of that divinity also participate in your development as well, because we are interdependent. So you can invoke them as well, but you primarily invoke the divinity that governs your krawa, and so forth. So you may be a child of Awusi, child of Adwoa, and so forth, but you can still communicate with Bena, Abena, you can still communicate with Afi, and so forth. The one that governs your krawa is your primary caretaker. So we wanted to get that information clear. Now, before we go forward with some of the functions of that energy with regard to our lives, we want to look and check in the chat room. We want to check to see if you have any questions or comments in the chat room. You can you need to log in as a user in order to interact. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, just hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised, and then we can connect with you on the phone line. So we want to look through the chat room real quick to make sure we didn't miss any comments. We saw some greetings. We just want to make sure we didn't miss any comments. So just give us a second scrolling through that. Okay. And so for the people who came in a little bit later, before we, after we got started, we mentioned at the beginning of the show that we are having our first annual HOODOO MAYN, Hoodoo Nation Festival. All-day festival with vendors and so forth from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. October 17th in Washington, D.C. It is a free event open to Afurakani people only, of course, all ages. We have vendors dealing with natural products, art, products for health and wellness, ritual uses as well. We'll have presenters. One of our vendors is a live food vendor and so forth, and then we have people selling books and people natural shea butter and hair care products and a number of different things, as well as dealing with ritual practices as well. We will be doing a presentation on Hoodoo, the Akan ancestral religion in North America. Of course, we will be selling our books as well at the event. What we are doing is, number 1, we have about 5 spaces left for vendors. If you would like to vend at the event, you can go to our Hoodoo page, Hoodoo MAYN page, and I'll put the link back in the chat room right now. We have the page on our website, and we also created a page on Facebook for the Hoodoo MAYN, Hoodoo Nation Festival. We're talking about our Akan ancestral religion brought to North America in the form of hoodoo, which we have maintained for hundreds of years. This is our ancestrally inherited ritual practice, born of our blood circles. So we want to bring that information out fully, minus the misinformation when people talk about hoodoo being infused with so-called Native American, pseudo-Native American spirituality and pseudo-European magic and all this other nonsense that has nothing to do at all with hoodoo. The Bible, people using the Psalms and everything like that, that is corruption and misinformation. It has nothing to do at all with hoodoo. Hoodoo is the Akan religion in North America, just like Vodou is the Fon and Ebe religion brought by Fon and Ebe speaking people to North America. Just like Gri is the Bambara tradition brought to North America. Juju is the Yoruba tradition brought to North America. And then you have the Gullah Geechee tradition dealing with the Ovambo speaking people and other people in the Congo region, and Voodoo speaking people as well, brought to North America. We brought our ancestral religious practices to this area and maintain them. And we're empowered by them to overthrow the whites and their offspring and wage war and escape from slavery and burn down plantations and force the end of enslavement. So, just like our ancestors and ancestors affected that result, we have the capacity to do the same and responsibility to do the same today and complete that project, that job that they began. So, if you would like to vend at the event, we have about 5 more spaces. So go to the HOODOO MAYN page and check out, you'll see the vendor application. We provide the 6-foot table for you, as well as 2 chairs, and the vending fee is $25 for a table. We're also publishing the HOODOO MAYN Journal, Hoodoo Nation Journal, specifically for that event. Everyone who comes will receive that free book when they come to the event. Now, in that publication, we will have, articles dealing with hoodoo, articles dealing with ritual culture and so forth. We will also have the list of the various vendors, the itinerary, of course, but we will also have people's ads, business ads for their businesses, organizations, and institutions, as well as personal ads. If you just support the work that we are doing and would like to place an ad, or if you want to share some information culturally with the community, you can take out an ad as well. We have the 1/4 page, 1/2 page, and full page ads. The 1/4 page is $25. A half page ad is $35, and the full page ad is $50. It will be an 8.5 by 11 magazine size type publication in color. The deadline for that is tomorrow if you would like to take out an ad, because we have to get all the JPEG files in so that we can begin to compile the book, finish the editing, formatting, and everything else, and then go to printing, because we print ourselves. We have to order we print on demand, and we order the supplies, the ink, and everything else online and have it shipped to us, because there's not a place where we can get that stuff right here locally at a normal price. We have to order it, through suppliers and so forth. So we need to get all that done ahead of time so we can make sure these books are published in time for the event. So the deadline for that is tomorrow. So if you'd like to take out an ad, you can do so. Go directly to the HOODOO MAYN site. You can do that now. Go to the HOODOO MAYN site page on our website, and you can take out an ad. Or if you would like to be a vendor, or if you want to make a donation to what we are doing, there's a donate button on the page as well. We're going to have a couple of more speakers, including myself. They may need some assistance with their expenses to come from out of state to travel, because, of course, we do not charge for our events. So they'll be, speaking. Of course, these are free presentations, and we may need to help with some expenses with a couple of people. So if you'd like to participate in that and support the work that we are doing, please do so. Of course, anytime you purchase 1 or more of our 16 books, that always assists in the work that we are doing as well. So any purchase, any donation, any ad, and so forth, that all will allow us to, make this event a success. When this book is published, this HOODOO MAYN Journal, and it gets out to all the people who come out, and those people go home and share the book with their friends and family and so forth, it will reach the hands of thousands of our people exponentially. So if you take out an ad for $25 or $35 or whatever, $50, then thousands of people will see your business, organization, or institution, whether you have a cultural organization, educational, business and so forth, whatever you're doing, whatever kind of product or service you have, if you're a conscious artist, whether it's, song or music, art, dance, ritual practice, whatever you're engaged in, as long as it's in harmony with order, part of our ancestral culture, then you'll have thousands of people, accessing your information. Of course, we're going to have an ebook version of that journal online as well. So we'll have the ebook version for everybody to go to the page and access, and that will stay on the website forever, of course. But then the soft cover versions will be given out to people as well. So if you take out an ad, of course, your ad will be in the ebook version as well. It'll be on the website so people will continuously be able to access it. It will also be linked to our Facebook page because we created a Hoodoo MAYN Facebook page as well, and it'll be there as well. So just go directly to the website, and of course, if you have any questions and so forth, you can hit us up at the email on the website or on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and so forth. We're Odwirafo on all those social media networks. All right, so before we go further, we are going to take one of the calls on the phone line, and then we're going to get back to the information, the rest. Michiovo on the phone line, number 5808. You had a question or a comment?
Yes. Michiovo.
Adele? Okay, can you speak up a little bit? We couldn't.
I'm sorry about that. I had my earphone in. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. Michiovo. Yes, the question I have is about the significance of these current events and phenomena. Since you're talking about this this orange moon or red moon, and I also had a question about the significance of recent activities. I didn't get to ask the question before when you had the broadcast about the acquisition of the hoodoo doll baby. And the question that I had, I think I posted it on Facebook, but I'm glad I had the chance to verbalize it. What is the significance of finding that hoodoo doll baby now? I mean, today. You could have acquired it 10 years ago. You could have acquired it next year. What's the ancestral significance of finding that, of acquiring that significant part of our history here in North America, right now at this time? Is there some meaning behind it? And I hate to use the term prophecy, for lack of better terms. Is there something in, that you feel or sense ancestrally and spiritually that we should be taking heed to now, today, with considering, the acquisition of that particular piece and some opportunities around some spiritual work that can be done around this particular phase of the moon. So I'm basically just trying to make sense of these recent phenomena and what the significance might be for us, right now, today, if my question makes sense.
No, I understand. So, the first question, you're asking about, and what the sister's talking about, if people didn't know, you probably saw in the news a lot of people talking about it was a total lunar eclipse last night.
Right.
Total lunar eclipse. When that happened, and it was slightly different this time because there was a series of lunar eclipses that lasted over the course of 18 months, and they would call it a tetrad and everything. And sometimes in this particular capacity, the moon would take on that reddish tint. So they would call it a blood moon, or we say Osorane Bere, or a red moon, and so forth. So there was a lot of fanfare going on with regard to that. Some people have talked about, prophecies and everything else dealing with the Bible, which, of course, is misinformation.
Right.
Whenever you deal with the moon, and we talked about this, in fact, we did a special broadcast last night on the Osorane Bere, the red moon, but also the Hoodoo Nation Festival and so forth. And yesterday was Kwesi or Awusi Adai, a sacred ancestral Sunday in Akhan culture, which happens every 42 days, and it happened to land yesterday on the same day of the Osorane Bere, the red moon, and also was the first Sunday, or Awusida, of our new year of 13,016, because we started our new year on the equinox, as we do every year. This year was September 23rd, the first day of 13,016. So what we were talking about, in connection with what we're talking about tonight, one of the reasons we talked about this further, Auset or Adwoa operating through the moon. And one of the symbols of Auset, we show that symbol on the promotional image for the show tonight, is the Tet symbol. It looks like an Ankh with the arms folded down. It represents the womb and, of course, the vulva, the lips of the vulva, and so forth. Of course, Auset governs the womb. The Tet symbol in ancient Kamit and Knesset, she utilized that symbol. It's a talismanic symbol. It's called the power of the Senef in Auset, or the blood of Auset. The blood of Auset utilized, talking about the blood of menstruation, but also conception, utilized in a talismanic fashion for healing, for warding off negative, discarnate spirits, and so forth. It's not a notion of, the blood of the woman menstrual, otherwise is 100% like, unclean, filthy, and all this other stuff. Our people use the Obra, so-called menses. In Akhan, for example, the term Obra means the menses, but then Obra also means life. So life is not unclean. Obra is not by nature unclean. It's the blood that carries the ovum, that carries that capacity for life. If someone passes the ovum without the ovum being fertilized, and therefore somebody being born 40 weeks later because the ovum was fertilized, and that ovum is passed, it's still birthing someone into the world, because all of these hundreds of thousands of ova you have in your womb are connected to ancestresses and ancestors. So every time a woman passes an ovum, she's still bringing a spirit into her sphere of awareness for longer or shorter periods of time. So this is why when women have the Chwa Bra, or the end of the menses, the menopause and so forth, then they would say, well, they're more given over. Some people will say in a negative capacity. In the Akan tradition, they're more given over to the Bayi and becoming Abayi, for quote-unquote witches. The Yoruba tradition, they're more given over to becoming Ajay, ritually, of the mothers, the witches, and so forth, because they have this influence. They're utilizing that higher psychic power. How is it that they have more influence and power? Because all of these spirits that they birth into the world every time they pass an ovum, these ancestral spirits that are in their sphere of awareness and influence, they literally have a small, quote-unquote, army of ancestral spirits that they have some influence over if they're living in harmony with order. And so they can wield and ask those spirits to affect people in the community. Now, if people are negative and they're dealing with negative spirits and so forth, no different than you have living people around you, and you tell somebody, hey, go kill somebody, go choke somebody, go steal something, and if they are influenced by you, they'll run and go do it. When they make their transition, if they're still weak and influenced by you and you're negative, and you tell that spirit, hey, go into this person's house, enter into their dreams, stand next to this person and put pressure on them, and they can feel this negative energy around them when they're walking around in the house. It's like, man, there's something in the house. Put that kind of pressure on them. You put that kind of pressure on them even magnetically. Just like you take a magnet and put it next to another one on the table and it pushes it across just with the magnetic field. The spirit has that electromagnetic energy. They can put that kind of pressure on somebody and you can feel it. And if they keep putting that kind of pressure on you, it causes you to be stressed, and putting that pressure on your womb, putting pressure if you were pregnant and causing a miscarriage just through the pressure of that energy that they're not magical, and they're not super deep and powerful, just putting that kind of negative energy on your spirit body and causing a chain reaction that will force you into a negative state physiologically, health-wise, until you remove that spirit from you. And being receptive to it, it can cause you all kinds of problems. So people can, wield influence over people when they're alive. When those spirits make their transition, people can wield influence over them, after death. Women who have given birth to numerous spirits through the menstrual cycle on a monthly basis have a team. They have a group of spirits that they can wield influence over if they are, in alignment like that. And so sometimes they'll try to give it a negative connotation, only that negative connotation. But that obra, Menses, is also obra, meaning life, and it's used to heal. It's used to ward off negative spirits. It's used for different things, used for cleansing and everything else, depending on what people are doing. So that Tet symbol is connected to that. The Senef in Auset, the blood of Auset. So you see that Tet symbol of Auset, looks like an ankh with the arms folded down, and they utilize that. You see them holding it in their hands as a talisman. They're utilizing that talisman as an instrument to transmit their energy to the individual who they're holding the talisman towards, or directing it towards, and so forth. The same way we use talismans today. We have sculptures on shrines and talismans that we put on the shrines and leave them on the ancestral shrine to charge them up, and then we put that necklace on or put that, bracelet on or anklet on or whatever, belt on, and it is charged with that energy, no different than when you're charging your phone. It can repel negative, discarnate spirits as well as negative individuals, just like we utilize these talismans today. These insumain, as they're called in Akan culture, we utilize them in ancient Kamit. Of course, the Uchau, the eye of Heru, or the left eye, being one of those major healing talismans, these major talismans that has that obliterating power to reject these negative entities and negative projections of other individuals. So that's what's happening with the Tet symbol. It's connected with Auset. And when you have the moon, in a total lunar eclipse, you have the moon, then you have the earth, and then you have the sun. They're all in alignment. The earth is in between the sun and the moon. So that magnetic force of the moon and on one side, and the electric force of the sun on the other side, and the earth is right in between of that major electromagnetic, polarity, then that has an effect on the earth itself. It has an effect on the magnetosphere of earth. We already know the moon affects the rising and falling of the tides, and the gravity of the moon affects the jet stream, and that affects, the temperature of earth and everything else. When that alignment occurs, then that affects the polar regions. It affects the magnetosphere. Of course, we are on Earth, of course, and we have our own magnetosphere, so it affects our magnetosphere. But the key, of course, is the spirits that animate the moon, the spirits that animate the sun. They utilize these entities as, transmitters of their energy, so we align with them as well. When that alignment takes place, when the Earth Mother aligns with the sun and the moon, then we, as her children, align with the sun and the moon, and can take advantage of that infusion of electromagnetic energy. So that's the significance for us, is that alignment with that fusion of energy that doesn't take place that often. It's similar to fasting and, purging yourself and going out in the sun and taking in a great deal of solar energy and filling your body up with, fiery energy so you become energized in the similar fashion.
Okay. Letting that all sink in. But it seems to make, the way you explain it, it gels. It makes sense.
And to give some detail, and we kind of summarize that. But if you look at our article, we have a couple of articles. One on Abena or Sekhmet on the Akan Dwo and Dwoa page. Then we also did a 3-part series on Sekhmet, Obosom, menstruation goddess. So we talk about her. She's the contractive force of menstruation, spilling the menstrual blood and so forth, or releasing the blood, just like she spills blood through warfare. She also contracts and releases blood through menstruation. Of course, Auset is connected to that, the blood of the, conception and so forth. So we did a 3-part series on Sekhmet, menstruation goddess, because she's the goddess, quote unquote, of menstruation. We show that. Right. Her name Sekhmet or Sechima is also Sechima in Akhan, which also means menstruation in Akhan, and all Akhan girls, when they go through rites of passage, are called Sechima because they're going through that process. So every girl in Akhan culture is called Sekhmet or Sechima when they go through the menstrual cycle. So the onset of menarche, rather. So we detail that information. We talk about Obra meaning life and Obra meaning menses and all of that in the Sekhmet. article series on menstruation, as well as the segment article, as she is the Obosom Abena. And then when you look at the Adwoa article, what we read from tonight, all of those in connection go into detail in the information we just summarized. So if, just in case you missed some of it, it's in detail in those articles. Of course, they're all, free downloads. And with regard to the...
Okay, I'll look for those.
The doll.
Yes.
So what the caller is talking about is many people have seen the Akuaba dolls in Akan culture, the dolls that are in the shape of an ankh. They have a large, round, ovular head with the two arms sticking straight out and a straight body. Sometimes they have a straight body without the legs being delineated, and sometimes the legs are out. They're in the shape of the ankh because onkwa in Akan means life, and that's, of course, onkwa, onkwa in ancient Kamit, meaning life. They're in the same fashion because that is the ankh. Literally, that is the divinity. And we show in our article on the Obosom deity Akua that the ankh and the onkwa is the same entity from ancient Kamit. We show images of ankhs in ancient Kamit that actually have arms, hands, and legs, just like the ankh in Akan culture has the arms and sometimes the legs as well. So that's a major, she is a major divinity, and that doll, that ritual doll, that little ankh doll, the wooden, what they call fertility doll, is used for fertility. It's also used in funerary practices, also used at shrines of deities and ancestral spirits for ritual practices. Just like in ancient Kamit, when you see the ankh used to enliven people and everything else. When you see the deity putting ankh to the nose of somebody, they're using their energy through the ankh to transmit their energy. The ankh is just an instrument to transmit their energy. So if Heru is holding the ankh and putting it in front of somebody, that powerful, fiery Heru energy is radiating through the ankh. If Auset takes the ankh and places it near somebody, her cool magnetic energy is radiating through the ankh. So the ankh becomes an instrument for whatever divinity is holding it. Just like with us, when we have that fertility, quote-unquote doll, the Akuaba, or the Akua, Nkua, then the energy that we have when it's on the shrine or with us, when we utilize it, our energy is used through that instrument to radiate and affect matter and affect other people and so forth. So people have seen that. You've seen those. You go to events like the one we're going to have, and people sell these sculptures and everything else. You've seen them online. We were able to acquire an Akuaba, but it wasn't from Afuraka from Ghana or Ivory Coast. This is one that was found in Virginia, and it was carved in the so-called 1700s. One of our Akan ancestresses carved this Akuaba right here in North America, nearly 300 years old. Our Nsamafo directed us to look for an Akuaba that was carved by the hands of one of our direct blood ancestresses right here in North America, showing that continuity of culture from ancient Kamit to West Afuraka, right into the soil of North America. And when we looked, we found one immediately. We went to the website. It was being auctioned. They said it was an African-American slave doll because they didn't know what they were looking at. We knew immediately what it was. And one of our Nanano Mpanyipo, honored eldresses, acquired it from the auction house. And then there was a ceremony a couple of weeks ago where they presented this Akua to myself. And because we're going to have it in the Akwamu Nation in North America with regard to our institution, the Akongwa Suyadine, our institution of learning and training and healing and employment and entrepreneurship, which is for all Afurakani people. We're establishing and we're working to open up that center this year. And of course, we have our GoFundMe page for that, the building fund and everything. But it's going to be in that center as part of the Ancestral Shrine. We had our New Year's celebration on the third day of that celebration was September 19th. We have a 7-day New Year celebration. Again, as I said earlier, the New Year is September 23rd. The equinox, that's the first day of 13,016. But we had the third day, we had a communal celebration. We had it here in D.C. People came from, of course, D.C. and Maryland, but also Philly and Jersey and different places came out to have the celebration, and we were able to reestablish, of course, as we always do, have a shrine, an ancestral shrine at the, observance. but we also, for the first time, had that Akua Badal, that specific, basically it's really a shrine in and of itself for that Akan ancestress, as well as for the Akan ancestresses and ancestors born right here in North America. She carved that with her hands, and now we have reclaimed that, and it's back into possession of the Afro-Akani people, specifically Akan people in North America. It's one of our ancestral artifacts showing our culture. And of course, her spirit manifested that day, and one of the brothers saw the spirit of the woman who carved the doll just as we were drumming, as we were evoking her. We saw her, of course, but later on, when people began to share what was going on, he decided to speak up and say he saw the sister as well. We didn't tell the people that we were invoking the specific ancestress, but at a specific time when we began to drum, we did, and she showed up. We saw her, but then he saw her as well, which was just a confirmation of the fact that we were evoking this ancestral spirit. So, but it's significant in the context of where it's the regeneration of our culture. Akua also means fertility, and Aku also means plantation in Akan culture, fertile land and so forth. So it's talking about the return. Akua returning in this fashion. She is the nurse mother of Heru. She governs the renal system in the great divine body, but also the excretory functions of lactation. So she's the nurse mother of Heru. The rain is, and the clouds are like the renal system and releasing the water and so forth and doing everything, nursing the plantations and the earth back to itself, so things can be fertile and everything else. So this is the return. The return of Aku is the return of fertility, the return of the culture and so forth, the return of joh-ah Mayn, the purified nation, joh-ah purification, Mayn nation, people, purified nation, and then Mayn also means west or western, the land of the setting sun. So this is why we designate the Western Hemisphere and our people in the Western Hemisphere, North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, Europe, our people who are descendant of those who were forced into enslavement outside of the continent, instead of using diaspora, which is a pseudo, religious term from fictional cartoon characters who never existed. Our people are joh-ah Mayn, the purified joh-ah nation, Mayn in the west, or the land of the setting sun, Mayn, joh-ah Mayn, the purified nation of Afro-Akani people in the Western Hemisphere as a collective. And within joh-ah Mayn, within the joh-ah nation, then you have subgroups. We have Akan people who were forced into the Western Hemisphere, Yoruba people, Ebe, Fon, Mende-speaking people, and so forth. And we are reconstituting our ancestral blood circle. And that is manifesting as people are beginning to embrace NANASOM, reestablish their ancestral religious tradition, recognize their individual functions in creation, their clan affiliation based on reincarnation, as well as our collective function as a group as Afro-Akani people, all coming to a head and really moving forward at the end of last year, which was last week, and the beginning of this year, which was last week, is really beginning to move forward in an accelerated, quote-unquote, fashion. And her showing up at this particular time and our Nsamampo directing us to find her because they knew where she was. We just didn't know. And once we found her, we were able to, get her back in our possession, so to speak, literally our spirit possession. She was a unifying force. People came from different areas, different states, but at the same time, even the people who weren't able to make it, they were all unified by the fact that, this was carved by the hand of one of our ancestors. And it carries, and that's a unifying force for Afro-Akani people in the Western Hemisphere. And it will also affect other people to begin to find where those Yoruba artifacts from this region in North America that our people brought or carved right here. Where are the Vodun ones, where are the, Bambara ones, where are the, Congo ones and so forth, and you begin to see our people resurrecting our culture. Instead of going to the continent to go purchase a shrine, we can dig right into the Kua, into the fertile earth right here and unearth, quote-unquote, archaeologically, but unearth our ancestral shrine that our people fashioned and formed right here, people from our own blood circle, to really reestablish our culture. And this is what the Hoodoo Nation Festival, the Hoodoo Mayn Festival, is about. the reestablishment of Afurakani ancestral religion from our blood circles right where we stand in this region of the Earth Mother. So all of that is connected to what's taking place now.
Wow. Yeah. One of the first thoughts that came to my mind was that this emerged now more than any other time. It seems to me that the Odwirafo they're taking their gloves off again, and I just feel I can't put my finger on it, but I just feel there's more aggression coming our way in North America, and so that's one of the reasons why I was asking, about the significance of acquiring and coming across that particular artifact at this time, in this day. Now, one of the examples of the aggression that I'm noticing is there's this unrelenting push to, not to mention the police killings, but this unrelenting push toward dissexuality and breaking up families and, to accept dissexuality as normal and to chastise and ostracize any black person who speaks against it. And it just seems even the people that are so-called, I hate using this term, but for lack of a better term, so-called conscious, even they're starting to buy into it. And to me, I'm looking deeper into that, and I just see that as a tactic, a battle tactic, a war tactic, to weaken us here. I don't know about other parts of the world. Obviously, we hear from the news, efforts to push this degenerate sickness in other parts of the world, but here in particular among Afurakani in North America, the push is just getting more and more aggressive, and they're getting less and less subtle with it. So that's just one example that's on my mind right now, and one of the reasons that I was asking about the significance of finding this. And I don't know if I'm on the right track or not, but it seems like that at this time this is coming up as something that we can use as a defense to this attack, this spiritual attack.
Absolutely, because that's they've come full circle. So the white Sonara Spring, as we've talked about in the past, come into being as a result of sexual deviance. So you have a small percentage of people become cancerous cells, engaging in criminality like murder and child molestation and incest and so forth, dissexuality. So we typically execute those individuals. Those who escape that execution, drawn up into northern Eurasia, they continue their sexual deviance like incest and child molestation and so forth amongst one another. They're separated from the larger group. They lose their abatum, their melanin, because of incest, which greatly increases the incidence of albinism, but primarily because of their spiritual degeneration. And, of course, the autoimmune disease, the vitiligo, that takes place as well. So it's through that sexual deviance, taking the life force energy itself and utilizing that in a perverse fashion. That's the most degenerate you can get beyond, murder. Taking life itself and corrupting life itself. So that's their origin. But then, of course, they tried to push that on our people once they began to invade the centers of civilization thousands of years ago, and we were destroying them on a regular basis. They tried to corrupt the ancestral religion a couple of thousand years ago and try to force Christianity and Islam and all these other fake traditions on us. We were rejecting that nonsense. They had to pretend under the cloak of these fake traditions that they didn't embrace homosexuality because they knew if they exposed themselves to who they really are, we would never embrace Christianity. They would never be able to get millions of black people to embrace Christianity over hundreds of years, or Islam or something like that, if they were flaming faggots teaching this culture. So they had to pretend like they weren't involved and keep it close. So you have these Catholic priests, and they've been doing that for over 1,000 years, not just recent.
Thousands of years.
The Muslims, dissexuality is rampant all throughout wherever white Arabs are in the world.
Yeah, you're right about
that. Idea that they don't accept homosexuality is a total lie. They've been perverts, bisexuals since their inception a few thousand years ago. But they have to hide it. Of course, the so-called Jews are, engage in oral sex on male babies as soon as they come out the womb. So that's their nature. They are perverts, spirits of disorder, criminals by nature without exception. All of them who incarnate, living and deceased, they will be that until they become extinct. There's not one exception to that reality. So they had to hide their practices under the cloak of these fake religions. But now they're coming out and exposing themselves and talking about Reform Judaism and Reform Christianity and, some of these Muslims and so forth, secular Muslims and so forth, and they're liberal now, and they're, bringing it, full circle, getting back to who they were in the beginning, which got them, separated from us from the beginning. So that's showing the end of their, their run with regard to civil. They don't have any other tricks to pull out. They're just exposing themselves now because this is who they are. It's showing that they don't have anything left in the arsenal. What else can you do to pervert the minds of people when you're pushing this sexuality? That's the most perverse you can get.
Right.
So it's like
the last
end of their toolbox, their toolkit at that point. But at the same time, there's a visceral response from our people, and the Nsamapo within us and our people ourselves are rising up against it to crush them once and for all and restore ourselves back to our natural culture. So, yes, they've increased their aggression physically through police violence, but then you see the response of our people listening to their own cry. Like the brother went on television, took his gun and blew the cracker's brains out on TV. That will begin to increase exponentially. And they cannot stop that kind of attack because they don't know when it's going to happen. When somebody's inspired by their Nsamapo to get up and massacre some crackers and go out, just like we talked about in the broadcast, certain cells have programmed cell destruction. So once they destroy some cancerous cell destruction and take themselves out, we have those kinds of cells in the community. They seek criminality, they eradicate these crackers, and then they take themselves out and send themselves back to the ancestral realm because it's time to go. No problem, but you cannot stop. And they didn't want us to get to that point. And ancestral religion is that which will motivate and empowers us to move to that point. So we have all kinds of tools in our arsenal to end this criminal control of the whites and their offspring. Let me say before we move forward, there's about 60 seconds left in the online aspect of the broadcast. If you want to listen beyond 11:30, you have to call in within the next minute, 657-383-0635, 657-383-0635. You have about a minute to call in, half a minute to call in. For those who are not able to stay, again, if you would like to place an ad in the ad book or just make a donation or purchase one or more of our books to support what we are doing, go to the HOODOO MAYN page. You can do that. If you want to be a vendor, we have the vendor applications, $25 for a table. So if you support the work that we're doing, please support the HOODOO MAYN Festival, the Hoodoo Nation Festival. Check that information out and please share that information. The deadline for the JPEG is tonight into tomorrow morning, so please submit that tonight. Okay, so yes, that information is coming up as far as, they're doing what they do, which is what cancer cells do. They wild out, they lash out, they seek to consume and destroy everything in their path. When they see immune system cells coming for them, they're not going to stop being cancer cells and saying, oh, we're sorry, we're going to stop trying to. They're going to continue to try to consume everything until the immune system cells exterminate them. And we have immune system cells within our community, and when they align with their culture, then they move to exterminate these cancer cells in the community. And the crackers see that happening already, and they know it's on the way to happening exponentially. But it's really nothing they can do to stop it, so they're just going to continue doing what they're doing.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for confirming my thought about that and for clarifying, the question about the significance of these events. Always clearly explained and give me something to think about further. So I appreciate everything that you're doing. And I'll let you take some additional calls. Medate.
Okay, Yeni Asera. We appreciate the call. Okay, so, and we see there's some comments in the chat room. Brother mentioned Mwalimu Baruti in one of his publications, Homosexuality and the Feminization of African Males. He also wrote the Sex Imperative, so he has good work. Of course, we had Mwalimu Baruti and Iaht Baruti on the Adwoa Marketplace program. So when you go in the archives, you can listen to their interview. It was a great interview, over 2 hours, talking about their Akoben House, their publishing company, but then they also have their Akoben Institute in Atlanta, educating our children and so forth. So you can check them out on the archive. Just want to check to make sure we didn't miss anything else. In the chat room, one question was, do the items like akuaba dolls, ankhs, etc. need to be made from natural materials like cottonwood, etc. in order to be effective? It's always good to have some natural material and something that, was fashioned by your hands and the hands of one of our people, of course. If there was something else found, factory made and things like that, you could go through some purifications and so forth to clean that piece and everything else, and ask the Nsama for Obosom if they accept that specific, cleansed implement, for to be a transmitter of their energy. If they do, then it's fine. If not, then you have to utilize something else. But typically, yes, you want to have something that's natural, whether it was wood or cotton or, some natural material. That's the best case scenario because it, resonates the energy of the Earth Mother. The cotton, the mineral life, everything coming out of her body is in alignment with her energy. There was another question about, I saw earlier, that who is the wife of Kepra. So you'll have Kepra, again, and this is one of those other pieces. People talk about Kepra, the divinity Kepra. They talk about Atem, and they'll say, well, Kepra and Atem are, fused together as Atem Kepra. Sometimes that name is used, Atumu Kepra, Atumu Kopa. Atumu Kopa in Akan culture is Odomankoma, or Odomankoma, as it's often pronounced. Odomankoma is Atumu Kopa. Kopa is the Coptic variation of Kepa or Kepra and so forth. So we wrote a whole book on Odomankoma, and we did and the divinity Tredriampong, also called Kepra and so forth. But you'll find those two divinities talking about Kepra and Ra and Atem, and they'll try to say they're all the same divinity. Actually, there are three different divinities. Ra is a divinity, Nyokopon and Akhan. Kepra is Tredriampong, also called Kopa, and Akhan. And then you have Odomankoma, who is Atem. Now, the wife of Atem, the wife of Kepra, is Asase Afua and Asase Yah, the two Earth Mother divinities. We know who they are. And since we know who Asase Afua is and Asase Yah is, since we know who these two Earth divinities are, and know they're connected to Odomankoma and Tredriampong and Akhan, we can say, well, are there two Earth Mother divinities with that name in ancient Kamit? And of course, we find them Asase Nebet Tepet and Asase Nebet Pet. Sometimes they'll show them as wives of Atem, but they're wives of Atem and Kepra. And you see one of the Asase divinities, she wears the beetle on her head because she's Keprit. So when you look in the hieroglyphic dictionary, it says Keprit, the feminine beetle. You're talking about Asase specifically, primarily Asase, wearing the beetle on her head, the wife of Kepra. And then you have the other Asase, who's the wife of Atem. So we know who these divinities are because we invoke them on a regular basis. You have black people imitating the whites and their offspring. So they start talking about how Atem engaged in self-stimulation or masturbation to create Shu and Tefnut, because they're repeating the nonsense of the whites and their offspring. And they call themselves scholars, they call themselves engaged in scientific inquiry and citing sources, and they have no knowledge at all of what they're talking about. It's pure foolishness. And they're repeating a homosexual, dissexual agenda put forward by the whites and their offspring because they're not doing the proper work, because they're imitating the pseudo-scientific method of inquiry given to them by the whites and their offspring. The real method of inquiry when you're talking about forces in nature is actually dealing with the forces in nature. We know who Auset and Ausar is, we know who Auset and Yaht is, we know who Odwirafo is, we know who Odwirafo is, we know them, and of course they show up with the exact same names and same functions and same relationships in ancient Kamit. And people will gloss right by them because the cracker didn't tell you to study. No different than Ma'ah in relationship to Ma'ah. No different than Iaht or joh-ah in relationship to Yaht or joh, the male and female divinity of the moon. When you deal and embrace your ancestral culture, you will deal with these divinities and they will direct you to who they are, first through experience, but then they will show you evidence that our ancestresses and ancestors left behind to show you exactly who they are, and it's been there the whole time. This is not new information that was just recently unearthed. It's been there the whole time, but when our people are brainwashed and think that they're engaged in real scholarship and they're really not, they simply ate the nonsense of the whites and their offspring and overlook something that's staring them right in the face. And they have the exact same books with the exact same citations, and they will stare directly at it, read it, and go right beyond it because white people told them, well, don't focus on that. Or because white people didn't focus on it, they didn't focus on it, so they'll say, well, Ma'ah didn't exist. Or if he did exist, he's just a minor deity and he's not part of the cosmology. They have no knowledge of what they're talking about. Even people calling themselves, involved in many Kemetic, quote-unquote, priesthoods and priestesses and so forth, some of those individuals are sincere and some of those individuals have no clue whatsoever what they're talking about. They're simply practicing, in reality, Hinduism in blackface, or some pseudo-occultism in blackface, some pseudo-metaphysician or metaphysics in blackface, not having any real understanding of cosmology because they're not dealing with the actual divinity. So when you look at our publications, we talk about Kepra and Kepri, the female divinity as well. Phone line, give me 1 second. Michiawo number 3452 on the phone line. You had a question or a comment?
Okay, I'm online?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I hate to be off topic, but I, have a concern. As far as this epidemic with autism, I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that or any advice, recommendations on how we can defend against it or treat it or recover from it as far as our young children coming into the world.
Okay, so sometimes it's kind of been in the news lately over the past few years, on one hand because of, this spike in this incidence of autism, on the other hand because people know it's linked to these vaccines that children are being given. Of course, the whites and the offspring will pretend as though it has nothing to do with the vaccine, and of course, it has everything to do with the vaccines, and that's why they vaccinate children. They've done this for, years, for decades, poisoning our people. You know what I'm saying? So this is chemical and biological warfare. When we understand who the whites and their offspring are, their nature, spirits of disorder, we shouldn't be surprised. We should recognize that every time they say, hey, we need to inject something into your body, we should automatically recognize our enemy just said they need to inject something in our bodies, and we must just sit and listen and accept what they say. We should recognize the reality. So, of course, it has everything to do with the vaccine. So the first thing is, of course, we should not be getting vaccinated. But then some of our people have gone through with that and gone through vaccination. There are some people who have specific programs that deal with, autistic children, and they have specific methods where they work with children and begin to realign their thought processes, and it begins to, in reality, just through a behavioral process, a cognitive process and a behavioral process with regard to the way that they interact with them. The brain begins to, so to speak, rewire some of its synapses, and then they come out of that, condition, depending on how severe it is. Then you have other individuals who will go to a naturopathic physician. So, of course, the first thing we always say is don't vaccinate, but then if you get involved in that, of course, you can have a religious exception. You practice ancestral religion, you sign that waiver or whatever, it is, but you don't vaccinate your children. But then if it has already happened, the first thing we always say is, you find a naturopathic physician in the community who does good work. For example, we have a couple of, on our Oklahoma Economic Development Model page, a couple of the people who came onto the show who deal with natural health and so forth. One of them is Dr. Afivi Adiro with Nkingu Health. You'll see her link on the page, Oklahoma Economic Development page on our website. Then we have Mama Mawusi Ashakir with the Body Temple Institute .com. You'll see her link on our website as well. And so you can connect with people like that who can either give you that information or they have a reference to somebody who deals specifically with that, specializes in that from a natural, holistic perspective. So either they can deal with it or they have some reference to somebody who deals with it. So we can look within our own community and get to people who are dealing with those issues on a regular basis.
Okay, they're on the economic development page?
Right. So Oklahoma Economic Development, OKOM. So even if you just go to the Odwirafo.com website and go to the introduction on the website and you see all the various links, one of them you'll see the Oklahoma Economic Development page. When you go there, you see the links to the various businesses in Nkingu Health, Dr. Afibi Adiro, and then the Body Temple Institute, Mama Mawusi Ashakir.
Okay. All right. I really appreciate your help on that. All right. How do you say it? Midase?
Oh, Midase.
Midase. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And we appreciate the call. Yeni Asera. And so that has been coming up. It's been coming up in different ways throughout our community, but then they kind of popularized it. The reason they popularized the argument through presidential campaigns in the previous presidential campaign cycle 4 years ago, and then it coming up again in this presidential campaign cycle on the GOP side and so forth. The reason why they popularized the argument and let some of the candidates bring it out and say, well, it looks like these vaccinations are causing autism, so they can bring that up. So, for example, the cracker Trump brings it up, and then the Negro Ben Carson, who's a neurosurgeon, immediately jumps in and shoots down any notion of vaccinations causing autism. So you have a Negro trying to shoot down the reality because Black people have been waking up and sharing that information and saying, listen, we need to stop vaccinating our children because they're giving us all kinds of diseases, including autism. It's deliberate. It's chemical and biological warfare. They've been doing this forever. So we need to wake up. And as they see a lot of our people pulling away from these, the American Medical Association, pulling away from vaccinations, changing our diets, no longer poisoning ourselves, they begin to panic because the whole point is to keep us eating the kinds of foods that keep us sick and in hospitals and so forth and keep us with high blood pressure and diabetes and stroke and everything else. They want us to continue to be addicted to drugs, so they, of course, increase access to drugs. So they're putting forth the notion of, for example, in D.C., they legalize marijuana. They're going to be legalizing marijuana all around the country eventually, and they're going to legalize, decriminalize all of the other drugs as well. And they've been putting one of these Black doctors out there going around talking about actually drug use is really not that bad, whether it's cocaine or heroin, whatever it is, as long as you do it in moderation. It shouldn't be criminalized and so forth. At the same time, They're talking about prison reform and Obama going to visit jails and so forth, and the Pope talking about prison reform and all this nonsense and brainwashing Negroes thinking, oh, they're finally realizing that they shouldn't, this war on drugs has not been working. Of course it was working. It worked perfectly. They enslaved millions of our people over the past 30 plus years with the crack cocaine and everything else and locked up our people in chains, basically. It worked perfectly. And now that they've destroyed a couple of generations of people languishing in jails and dying in jails and dying from crack addiction and everything else, babies being born addicted and so forth, then they will turn around and put so much pressure on you that you beg them to decriminalize drugs and make drugs available freely in the community. You're begging them for that now. And then, so when they say we're going to let everybody out of prison who was locked up with non-violent drug offenses, okay, that's fine. But at the same time, the only reason they're doing that is because what they're going to do is decriminalize all the drugs, make all the drugs available, crack cocaine, heroin, and everything else, make them all available, and then release people from prisons, and at the same time take jobs away from people because they're also opening up the lanes for so-called illegal immigration and amnesty and so forth. So when the confluence of those forces take place, it's all organized. Release the people from prison and no longer lock people up for non-violent drug offenses. So people are not going to jail, but then also make drugs available and also take away jobs from millions of black people because all of the illegal immigrants, so-called, are now have amnesty and they can move about. They're coming out of the shadows, so to speak, as the crackers are saying. So they take all of the jobs. Our people are out in the community. We are a nation of zombies walking around. We can't get any jobs because we're all strung out, children being born, strung out, adults being strung out, being fired from their positions. And they don't need black people to work in these positions because they have these 11 plus million undocumented workers who came out of the shadows and they will take these positions. So it's all a setup to make us a nation of zombies, unemployed zombies who are dying at higher rates from drug addiction and disease, violence, and everything else, so that we can implode. So it has nothing to do with them being magnanimous or recognizing that they did us wrong, and crackers coming out like the Clintons talking about we were wrong with the, crime bills in the early 90s. They knew exactly what they were doing then, and they planned to change course 20 years later to make us believe that things were, they made a mistake and they're sorry, all this other nonsense. These are criminals. These are our enemies. This is all orchestrated. So we need to recognize who our enemies are and deal with them accordingly. And at the same time, we need to recognize in that process that we cannot participate in these self-destructive behaviors. And these crackers, of course, are forcing these things upon us, brainwashing our people into self-hatred, which sets us up to be, those who will succumb to drug use, seeking to escape this reality. And the cycle just continues. So we need to be aware of that. And a question in the chat room saying, I wonder if they're going to release people that they've infected with diseases. Of course, that's already been part of the process. Okay. So just want to make sure we didn't miss anything else in the chat room as we're looking through. Okay, so I think that was the last piece from the chat room, and it's almost 12 o'clock. So what we'll say, we'll end here. We will be back on tomorrow night, of course. But again, Hoodoo Nation Festival, the Hoodoo MAYN Hoodoo Nation Festival, October 17th, Washington, D.C. It's an all-day event. It's a free event. It's for Afro-Akani people only, of course. We have vendors. We have presentations. I will be doing the presentation. We'll have other presenters as well, doing different aspects of hoodoo and culture, ritual practice, and so forth. Food vendors. We'll have music, art, natural products for wellness, health and wellness, natural beauty products and everything. We have 5 vendor tables left. If you would like to be a vendor, go to the Hoodoo MAYN page on our website. fill out the vendor application. It's $25 for a table. We provide the 6-foot table and 2 chairs for you. And then we also have the HOODOO MAYN journal that will be given out to everybody who comes. If you'd like to take out an ad, 1/4 of the page, a half page, or a full page is $25, $35, or $50, respectively. Or if you'd like to take out a personal ad to share ancestral information and culture and so forth in the journal, or just to support the work that we are doing, you can take out an ad there. Or if you have a study group or some other group that's dealing with culture or something positive or whatever, ancestral wisdom, you can take out an ad just to promote that information as well. So hit us up on the HOODOO MAYN page, and please share this information with your contacts. We want as many of our people to come out and experience our ancestral religious culture born in the blood circles of our people in North America. We want as many of our people to come out. This is our first annual Hoodoo MAYN, Hoodoo Nation Festival, and of course it's going to be continued. So if you want to connect with us online, Odwirafo on Instagram, Odwirafo on Twitter, Odwirafo on YouTube. Of course, follow us here on the Blog Talk channel. Hit the follow button on our page so you'll get all the emails instantaneously. We also have the afuraka-afuraikai.ning.com website, our own social media network, which is separate from Facebook, that we pay for. You can create a profile. We post blogs and videos and discussions and everything else. It's similar to Facebook, but it's just our own private network. We have hundreds of people on the network from here as well as around the world. Our people, of course, interacting and sharing the same information. People have begun to form study groups, NANASOM, Feku, NANASOM, ancestral religion study groups in different states. Many of them have posted their study groups in the groups section on the site. If you would like to establish a NANASOM study group, you can do that immediately with yourself and one or more people, online or in person. When you establish a NANASOM Feku, you can go to our study groups page, our Feku page. We have a curriculum. When you establish a study group, of course, it is your group. You are not up under us. It's your own independent group, but we do have a recommended curriculum for, optimal, development and so forth based on our publications in order from the Kukutuntun being the first one and down. And anybody who becomes part of a study group or starts a study group or participates in the study group, you receive automatically a 30% discount from our books. So our books range, we have 16 books out. They range between $8 and $11, but you can receive 30% off of that price as well. And you'll see that on our publications page and the Feku page, the study groups page. And finally, with our 16 books, the ebook versions of all of our books are free download, so you can download all of them. But then we have the softcover versions. As we said, we print in-house, in color on our own printers. They range between $8 and $11. Any book of order of 10 books or more, you receive an automatic 30% discount for large orders. Some people will order the whole 16-book set, automatically 30% off, or some people order the first 10 books, or 11, 12, 13, 14, or the whole 16-book set, and it's automatically 30% off. For example, the first 10 books is 30% off, so that's $66 for 10 books. Actually, it's $105 for the whole 16-book set. So if you like to order the whole 16 books, it's like a set. It's encyclopedic in that sense, dealing with various aspects of culture in detail. So you can check them out online and so forth, the NHOMA page, the publications page. Any purchase of our books is automatically assisting us in the work that we are doing. All the presentations we do in different cities are free of charge when people come in, and we also do not charge a speaker's fee to organizers of our event. We were just in Philadelphia. We will be in New Jersey on October 10th, visiting one of the ancestral religion study groups, and we have an event that is being organized in Alabama as well for November, and New York as well for November as well. So we'll update you on the site and through the broadcast as these things develop. But if you support the work that we are doing, and please support the Hoodoo MAYN, Hoodoo Nation Festival, you can do so. Go to the page. You can make a donation. You can purchase some books. You can purchase an ad out of the journal, share the information as well. And again, Yaht, we thank you for tuning in. And Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. That's all.
Sprint presents Time Machine.
Hey, what are you doing?
It's 17 months until I can upgrade to the new iPhone 6S, and I'm building a time machine so I don't have to wait.
Oh, with Sprint, I never have to wait. I get to upgrade to the newest iPhone right away, whenever it comes out.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Man, I gotta switch to Sprint.
Why does your time machine sound like a microwave?
Oh, it's cooking my leftovers from tomorrow night.
The world's best offer on iPhone 6S. Get iPhone 6S as low as $1 a month when you trade in your iPhone 6. And with iPhone Forever, get a new iPhone every year forever.
Offer not available everywhere. Includes 21-month lease, no security deposit, excludes taxes, subject to well-qualified credit, new line port at $36 activation fee. Requires smartphone trade-in, regular $22 a month. iPhone Forever's lease upgrade eligibility does not guarantee monthly payment amount, phone selection, or plan rates. Service is additional charge. Remaining lease payments due if service canceled. Restrictions apply. See Sprint.com.